church with the best intentions often teaches you the wrong things about money. Now, I say this with the greatest of respect to so many people in so many churches around the world. And yet I equally cannot ignore the questions that thousands of Christian business owners ask me every week around the topic of money. And if those questions were dealt with in the church, they wouldn't be passing them towards me. The church often misleads us with regards to money. It gives us some of the picture, but not the whole picture. A lot of money conversation in churches is focused on tithing, which is wonderful. I mean, a church does need money to operate, and God is due his cut from what we earn from what it is that he provides us. You know, the air to breathe, the planet to walk on, the people to love, the animals to observe in the bush. However, if he wanted us to be broke, he simply would have written it just like that within the Bible. You know, it would be a commandment somewhere maybe. Thou shalt be broke. The truth is, in the Bible, he actually asks us, commands us, and offers us the opportunity to fully prosper. He says he will provide for us in abundance. And for me, that sounds like the exact opposite of broke. And so how do we, as a Christian business owner, navigate money and do it without the biggest fear that so many people talk to me about, which is greed and falling in love with the money? And so in this video, I want to share with you some tips, some suggestions, and some ways that I help thousands of Christian business owners just like you navigate money for themselves. And I want to start with the big one, is who are you making the money for, and whose money is it anyway? You see, if you're making the money for you and your ego, you know, the car I can drive, the boat I can sail, the house I can have, so on and so forth. If that's your primary motivation, the word I is alluding to a level of greed. But what if your motivation changed? What if your motivation was, I'm making this money so that I can give to the kingdom, so that I can do good, so that I can support my church more, so that I can sponsor a charity or a kids' football team? What if we set our goals around how much we could give, in the knowledge that he only expects us to give 10%, 1/10, as mentioned in the Bible? And so what if our financial goal became to give $1 million a year? Well, God, in his generosity, will therefore ensure that we have 9/10 that are for us. Sadly, a proportion for Caesar, but that's a different video. And so we have to change our perspective on money. Who's it for? What's it to be used for? We also have to understand that money isn't ours. In fact, money that's focused on, and we find this in Proverbs, actually usually disappears. The money is simply his. And if we need or want more of it, well, it's probably just an evidence base that we're not doing enough to look after enough of his children. What I mean by that is not get enough customers into our business and make that our focus. Money is simply an evidence base of how good you are at the game of business and how much God trusts you to sponsor the wealth when it is that he gives it to you. You know, a father does not give their child something that they don't feel like their child is able to use responsibly. You know, I make a big effort not to give my 4-year-old son an axe to run around our property with, or a chainsaw to run around the property with, because the little rascal might well chop down the woodland on my property. He might well go and cut his hand off and do himself damage. And so when it comes to money, the father is simply waiting for you to be responsible enough with the money to bless you with more. The next part of money is this. It's people who have money. And so if the father believes that you're going to go and do business with people in an unethical way that isn't bound in some form of morality, where you don't keep to the promises that you make, you don't deliver the quality of service or the miracles that you promise, well then of course you might get money, but it might not be sustainable. It might come and it might go. And so he will only trust you with what he trusts you with. Now, we get prayer wrong at about this point in time. Because when it comes to money, we're often, Lord, 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 please would you provide me with a business that makes 10 million profit per year? And if you do, or when you do, I will give 1 million, 1/10 to my church. I'm sorry, but that prayer is simply us trying to negotiate with Jesus or negotiate with God and trying to claim a higher ground than they have. And so maybe we should be going backwards and saying, Lord, 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 please provide me with a business, as I said earlier, that can go and tithe 1 million, as opposed to the negotiating with somebody who we should be respecting. Now, I'm pretty sure that some of this may have been taught in your church and some of it may not have been taught in your church. But in order to unlock your wealth, you actually have to go and understand biblically what money is, how it works, why it works, and whose it is. A great example I often refer people to is King Solomon in 1 Kings 10. In 1 Kings 10, King Solomon acted as a form of a kingdom consultant or nation consultant to the Queen of Sheba, who came to visit his kingdom to find out why it was so highly regarded, why it was so prosperous, and why it was so peaceful. He advised her for free, but in return, she rewarded him with 125 talents of gold, some mere $300 million worth of gold today, plus essential oils and minerals and incense and cloth and whatever else. And on her way back to her kingdom, she stopped and spoke to many, many other kings and queens of Arabia, told the story of Solomon, shared with them what she'd learnt, and they went and visited him. They went and visited him, and they then paid for his services every year. And you'll find this in 1 Kings 10, to the point that at one point in time, those thousands of years ago, in today's money, Solomon was earning $1.92 billion US in gold per year. And you can go and find that evidence for yourself within 1 Kings 10 and then go and do the maths, taking talents into the weight and into the dollars itself. And so I'd encourage you to go and spend more time in the Word and with the Word. I'd encourage you to interrogate it to a deeper level. Study Psalms, Proverbs, and Kings, and then go and look into your New Testament and go and understand what Jesus himself knew and thought about money. Jesus was a guy that had 12 people that he looked after. He had a treasurer, and he had Jewish wealthy women who sponsored him to go and follow his calling. Jesus himself was a wealthy man. And I'd encourage you to understand that be like Jesus isn't just some out of work calling. It's actually a calling to prosper, just like he did.